My name is Justin Reed, and I'm a professor of Hebrew Bible or Old Testament at Louisville Seminary. The courses that I teach often involve the history of how Black people have engaged with the Bible and the consequences of biblical interpretation on Black people and other minoritized communities. And so, with that in mind, I was invited to share this curriculum on honoring God's diversity. In this passage that I'm looking at from Matthew 15, when I talk about it, people tell me sometimes that it sounds like I'm saying Jesus got it wrong, that Jesus is not perfect, that Jesus can't be God, that there's something deficient about Jesus. Oh no, not my Jesus. In fact, where I'm aiming here, what I'm trying to get people to see about Jesus is how he got it right. What Jesus got right is not where he started from, but what Jesus gets right is how Jesus learns, evolves, progresses, changes for the better. That is what Jesus models in this passage. And that's what I hope we all can see. Where is it that Jesus is coming from? In Matthew 15, Jesus encounters a Canaanite woman. In Mark's gospel, she's called a Syro-Phoenician woman. She is somebody who ethnically is the underclass, the marginalized, the hated from the perspective of Jesus's people. Jesus' starting point includes those scriptures that he holds dear. Obviously, Jesus doesn't have the New Testament. He's got the better half, the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible. In these texts, we see passages like in Deuteronomy chapter 20, where the passage says from the mouth of God that the Canaanites are supposed to be destroyed, utterly destroyed. The Hebrew word herem is what's used there, and it's a word that describes the killing of everything that has breath in it. Total destruction. And the other passages in Jesus's Bible lament the fact that they didn't destroy everybody. In Nehemiah chapter 13, the mixed marriages that are happening are a problem that Nehemiah wishes weren't there if only they had destroyed all these people of the land. That's the theology that Jesus was raised with. It's not just coming from the text, but coming from the people around him. Jesus would have heard and learned those sorts of views of the Canaanite other. Now, Jesus is bringing a radical vision, a different way of following and communing with God. And it's rooted in these Jewish traditions. And there's some things that Jesus needs to learn to tweak. And so this woman comes to Jesus pleading, and he tries to get rid of her, insults her, calling her a dog, but her response, her persistence does something in Jesus' understanding. It changes something. And so where does Jesus end up? Jesus ends up seeing a vision of full inclusion, a vision of diversity that's more than just bringing this woman as an attachment to a messed up system of thought. Oppressed people do not need to be included into a broken system. Marginalized people are not trying to be integrated into a burning house. This woman would not have benefited from being an attachment to a religious community that continues to preach hatred against her people and participate in the disempowerment of her people, her neighbors, her community. The transformation that Jesus goes through lands him in a place where he centers her concerns. By the end of Matthew's gospel, we get Matthew 28, where Jesus gives what we call the Great Commission, where Jesus no longer says what he told the woman initially, I'm only here for the lost sheep of Israel. Instead, Jesus says to his disciples, go to all the nations. And that's the mission. it becomes central to Paul's gospel. Paul is the apostle to the Gentiles. And in the way that the Bible presents this story, we could see the idea that Christianity becomes the huge thing that it becomes because Jesus learned from her, from a Canaanite. Jesus learned that God's mission was to all the nations, only by focusing on the needs, the concerns, and honoring the perspective of this representative of an extremely marginalized group, was Jesus able to adopt a vision of diversity that could include everyone. And so when we see that method from Jesus modeled in the text, it gives us an example of how to follow Jesus while acknowledging some of those toxic things that we've inherited and how we might transform them by centering the perspectives of the marginalized.